Hello there, Andrea Dell here, head content conspirator of the Content Conspiracy, also a freelance copywriter, entrepreneur, author of Dream Client Goldmine, and I am here to talk to you about 3 things I learned from learning to pull content out of thin air. And I say that in quote marks. I guess you could say practically pull it out of thin air. 3 things I learned. If you need content for your business, your book, whatever it is, maybe you're a copywriter as well and need it for clients, then you might find this video helpful. When I got started in freelance copywriting, it was 2017, and my first client had a nutrition business that was just taking off. I got in right as this tsunami of growth was hitting, and it made sense for her to hire a freelance copywriter and outsource the copy to that person, which ended up being me. And this, because she was so focused on growing her company, she really didn't have the bandwidth to handhold me, to send me ideas. Sometimes she would, but a lot of it was on me. I did have a business coach at the time who was is still a very experienced copywriter, so I did have a mentor to lean on. I had done some self-study in content up until then as well, from Ben Settle primarily, a guy named Ryan Lee. I also had done some of his things. And then I worked at a newspaper. So even though ad design was my primary job there, I did get into article writing. I love writing. And I just got good at finding content and taking a vague police report and fleshing it out to something that someone would actually want to read. Things like that. Not fabricating anything, just taking some disjointed little fragmented thing that was in very formal blah, 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 and just making it approachable to read. So I had some experience in certain contexts, but writing for someone else in their voice and doing it in a way that builds the relationship with their audience and produces income, there was a learning curve, especially because this client did not have the bandwidth to handhold me. She needed to focus on the many other things that needed to get done to grow her business, hence why she brought me on. She knew the content and copy were needed. She didn't have the bandwidth to do them. Because of that, I had to learn how to get good at finding content and making content out of basically nothing. And the first thing I learned from doing that is that content really is everywhere. I would go to her Instagram stories or her Facebook posts and videos she did and just listen or watch or read, and something would leap out at me as, ooh, I could use that for some content. My brain would make connections of, okay, I can see how I can take this and I can tie it to a certain product, a certain offer, and that's what I do. And in her voice, I'd go write and flesh it out, and it would become an email or a post or whatever it was. And I just got better and better at that. And now my brain does that even when I'm not trying to do that. In fact, trying to find those connections can actually stifle it, because it's just after over 5 years at the time of this, when I first published this video, it's just something I've been doing on a daily basis for over 5 years. Over 15,000 pieces of content in 5 years, and I'm sure it's exceeded that. I just lost count. It's a habit for me now. But I look around and I see people who don't have that developed yet, and they think that, oh, it's hard to come up with ideas to write about. No, it isn't. It's really quite easy when you learn to put on what I call your content goggles and start seeing the content that's all around you. So that's the first thing I learned out of perhaps necessity. But either way, it's still very valuable that content is everywhere. And the first step to seeing it and hearing it and even thinking and feeling it is to acknowledge that, hey, this is everywhere. And so I'm going to kind of say, all right, brain, let's start seeing and hearing this. What are some things we can connect? And then just chill out, let your brain do its thing. You might be surprised at what comes up. So that's the first thing I learned. Second thing I learned is that we tend to overthink content. We think, especially if you're new to it, you think it has to be this clever, brilliant masterpiece every time. A couple of years ago, I heard of something for the first time, at least that I remember, something called the masterpiece mindset. And the masterpiece mindset is, it has to be perfect, or it's not worth doing. I can't publish it. I can't be imperfect. Anything, somebody's going to criticize, whatever. And first of all, somebody probably is going to nitpick it, because human beings have this interesting tendency of expecting perfection, but not maybe from themselves and or others, but not being capable of it. And frankly, I think that's a factor in why we do it, is I can't fix myself, so I'm going to try and control other people and fix them, which doesn't usually go over well, and that's a whole other conversation. But the point is that content doesn't have to be as complicated as a lot of stuff tries to make it sound. Especially if you're new. If you're new to content, trying to go to some advanced content training that talks about this line needs to do that, and just makes it super detailed, can be very overwhelming and possibly cause you to stop. You don't have to. I think you can move through the overwhelm and just take it a step at a time. A lot of people struggle with that, and I've struggled with that in the past too. Sometimes I still do if it's overwhelming enough. So I get it. This is not me preaching. This is me stating an experience a lot of us have. But really, content can be as simple as telling a quick story from your day and tying it to your offer. It really can be that simple. And since we now live in a very voyeuristic society, thanks to social media and platforms like YouTube, where people post and talk about their real lives, that lands. It's sort of like getting a sneak peek behind the makings of a movie, right? It's that same concept, but behind the lives of people, the people you know, and including total strangers. And it can be as simple as that in your content. I do that all the time, do that for clients. It's not the only option, not even close. But if you're trying to figure out where should I start, what should I do, fun little experiences from your day that you can pull a little lesson or tie in to your offer from and segue into it, you can do that all the time and have all the content you'll ever need, pretty much, for at least for things like emails and maybe social posts. Again, not your only option, but an option that can be a reliable, solid go-to. So that's the second thing I learned. Content's really easy to overthink, especially when you're new to doing it and you're navigating the fear of what will people think of me and all the gobbledygook, all the head trash. Try to steer clear of that. Pick a simple strategy like a story or quick story or lesson from your day. Turn it into something that connects to your offer and go. And then as you get comfortable with that, you'll be able to maybe branch out to other things if you want. You might just stick with that. I know a lot of people who do, and I know a lot of people who almost never do that. So there's lots of ways to do it, and picking a horse and riding it is going to be your best bet for getting results. Third thing I learned, and I'm going to refresh my memory. Third thing I learned ties into what I just said a little bit, and that is to try and be yourself in your content. Why is that? Well, because you are the only thing your competitors cannot rip off, really, without looking and sounding totally screwed up because they're clearly ripping someone off. I see people try to imitate a couple of copywriters that I'm on their lists, and they have very distinctive styles and voices, and when other people try to copy them, it just is super cringy. They miss the mark. They clearly don't understand the strategy behind why that particular copywriter is doing and saying what they're doing and saying. And that's one of the dangers of using things like templates and trying to copy someone else's voice is because you may not have all the facts and the reasons they're doing what they do. And I say that as someone who is a ghostwriter, so I fully understand the nuances of writing in someone else's voice, but my job is specifically to do that. What I'm not doing is taking their voice and trying to pass it off as mine, which is what a lot of people do, including when they use things like copy and paste templates and just keep them they just keep them as close to the original template as they can, end up sounding like no one and blending in with the crowd. So that's something to keep in mind. If you really want to stand out in today's marketplace, which is getting more and more crowded, especially with AI making it easier and easier to generate content, I believe that the people who can sound distinctive, which is going to be sounding as you can be, are going to be able to stand out a little bit more than people who are just using the generic stuff. The trick with that is getting comfortable enough with yourself and your own voice to lean into that, not who you think you should be, not who the perfectionist parent who nitpicked you to death think you should be, not who the bully in school thinks you should be, none of that. It's all who you authentically are. And this, I know this is kind of deep and this can take some work to figure out, but practicing it is your best bet. And going through the vulnerability it takes to practice that is again going to be your best bet. Leaning into who you are, your natural style, stop comparing, stop just being you in your content is really going to help you not only stand out from the sea of other people trying to do this, but draw in the right people for you. That's another downside to modeling and copying other people's voices that we don't think about, is that you are going to bring in people that are drawn to that, and they may or may not be a good fit for you. You might think they are, but if it's not who you authentically are, it'll be torture. And you'll be exhausted and stressed and drained. I see this a lot, and I've accidentally played with this a little bit, not deliberately trying to copy anyone, but just not embracing who I am and my quirks and letting that out in my voice, okay? Hope that's making sense. It is vulnerable to put yourself out there, but it's vulnerable to have a business and be successful. And the only way you're going to do it is to move through those times that feel very vulnerable. Maybe you feel weak, exposed, etc. Embrace the grown-up in you. And I don't mean that in a be a grown-up snide kind of way. Just embrace the adult, the grown-up in you, and lean into that. And it will get easier if you do it consistently. I speak from experience that it does get easier. And what made you vulnerable before, not even a blip on the radar when you get into this enough. Be yourself. That will bring in the people that are the best fit for you. It will repel most of the nightmares, not all, but a lot more than if you try to be a mishmash of others or whatever. Just chill out, lean into your voice, and get to know your own voice. A lot of times we don't really know what it's going to be, and interestingly, until you go out and do it. It's kind of hard to be yourself in today's world, and human wiring makes that tricky, but it's worth it. It's worth it. So, just to recap, 3 things I learned from practically pulling content out of thin air. First thing is that content is everywhere. It really is. Second thing is that it can be very easy to overthink your content. So pick a strategy, keep it nice and simple, and just go with it. You're not locked in. This is not the 10 Commandments on the stone tablet that Moses brought down from the mountain. It's just something you're trying. Think of it as experimenting. I'm trying this out. And if it doesn't work or it doesn't quite line up with what I thought it would be, I have the freedom to change it. And then the third thing I learned is that it's important to be yourself in your content. Even if you're a faceless brand, if you don't want to be the literal face in some way, if you're a brand, brands still need a personality and maybe, but that's not what I meant. A personality and a voice too, in order to stand apart from the sea of other options that are out there. And the reason for that, whether you're a personal brand or a faceless brand, is because it will bring in the people who are a good fit for you. It will give you the only real way you have to stand out against your competition, to stand out and get the attention of the people who are a good fit for you. And it will repel the people who are a pain in the butt, who don't align with you, who are not going to be able to be successful with your program because it's really maybe not the greatest fit for them, and just they suck up all your energy that you could be using to serve the people who are going to be successful and are a good fit for you and are a pleasure to work with. Your voice being your authentic voice. The word authentic is so overused, but it's the right word for this. Leaning into your authentic voice and your authentic self can help you do that. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate it. Feel free to hit the like and subscribe. Like button for this video, subscribe button for this channel so you don't miss a video. And I'll see you in the next one.